Ugly women, that's what we like. Ugly women riding the bike. Ugly women in a spaceship. Ugly women, ugly as sin.
I thought I would revisit my last video, which was about Ciri from The Witcher 4 and the new game from Naughty Dog Intergalactic, which features a female protagonist named Jordan. Both these characters have stirred up some controversy, and I discussed that in my last video, and I think there's just some things I want to go a little bit further into, both in terms of kind of why this matters, why there's an overreaction to it, looking at the backlash to the backlash to the backlash to the backlash, etc. We'll start with Jordan from Intergalactic. Now, but with both these characters, though, I think one of the reactions, sort of maybe we'll call it the basest of reactions, is she's ugly, or they're making her look like a man, or whatever. And this is both to the new version of Ciri as well as Jordan. And I think that I understand where this is coming from. I think it's wrong, first of all. I think Ciri in The Witcher 4 cinematic looks fine. I really don't think she looks ugly or mannish or any of those things. My problem with that trailer was simply how different she looked. Now, I think that they could have taken Ciri from The Witcher 3 and aged her up and made her look rough. I think they could have made her look uglier than she is in this trailer. I mean, they could have made her more scarred. They could have made her just much more disheveled, like the years have been hard on this person because she's been fighting monsters and she's gone through the trials and all that. And instead, they just made her look very different. And I thought that was weird. I thought it's strange. I do think that it's probably partly because of the new voice actor that they hired, and they're making the character look more like the actor. But I'm not sure why they have to do that either, just simply because, like, it's not like Geralt looks like Doug Cockle, who's the voice actor for Geralt. I mean, he looks nothing like him. So you don't always have to make the characters look like the actors. This is another weird thing that's been going on in video games lately, which is that all these characters always look like the actors who play them. In games like Until Dawn or various others where there's some celebrity actors, I look just like them, and it's like it's a video game. You don't have to make the video game characters, just like in an animated show or movie. You don't have to make the characters look like the actors. I get why it's done, especially like with Death Stranding or something, where it's Daryl from The Walking Dead, Norman Reedus. He looks just like him. I get why they do that, because there is some, well, first of all, for marketing purposes, you have a very well-known and liked celebrity. Well, you market it by having that guy in your game. But at the same time, I don't love the trend. I don't love it. I don't want video game characters to always look like the actors they play, because I want actors to play all kinds of different characters. I don't think you have to look like the character. You just pick a show like The Legend of Vox Machina. It's not like they made all those characters in Vox Machina look like the voice actors from Critical Role. Thank goodness, it wouldn't have worked at all. They don't look anything like them, because they can do the voices without looking like the characters. So that's a weird reason to make Ciri look different. But to say that she's ugly, I think is honestly kind of ridiculous, because I think she looks fine. She just looks very different. Same thing with the character Jordan in Intergalactic. I don't think it's that she looks ugly. I think she did look kind of out of place. I think the shaved head look felt weird to me. Like, I guess I would, if they're going for that sort of cassette futurism, I would have picked a look that sort of felt more like the 80s. But really it was more about that character's demeanor, I would say, rather than just her appearance. Her appearance signaled to me immediately that this was going to be her demeanor, and then her demeanor backed up my initial impression. So, and by a problem with demeanor, I mean, you've got this character who's right off the bat sort of flippant, sarcastic, know-it-all, smarmy. It's just this archetype that's been making its way into a lot of video games, especially with female characters. That is part of this whole sort of larger girl boss trope. And I think that people are just getting tired of that. And I would say that there's other tropes in video games and other character archetypes that are also somewhat annoying. But the difference between that and like the grizzled kind of silent male protagonist character is that the grizzled silent male protagonist character is sort of a blank canvas, right? You don't have to think too much about their personality. You're generally speaking, a lot of those characters are fairly blank slates, and so you go into the game without having to worry too much about what the character says or does because they're just not that involved, and you kind of get to be the sit-in for their lack of personality. And in a way that works really well with a lot of games just because then you don't have to fuss over any character you dislike. And that's the problem with the Girlboss trope, is that they generally are fairly unlikable characters. And I don't really understand this. We see this a lot in movies and TV also, this same trope, where it's not that they're, actively bad people or anything, but it's just this very obnoxious character. It's sometimes because they take on a lot of the traits of a traditionally toxic male character, and a lot of times just because they are presented in a way that they're the best at everything, they're better than the people around them, they show everybody up all the time, and it's not a great look. Like, I don't want to play that character, Whereas, in a game like The Last of Us, for instance, let's look at Joel and Ellie. Joel is a really flawed character, right? He's done a lot of bad things, but you still find a lot of reasons to relate and become attached to him. And meanwhile, Ellie is actually a super likable character. I mean, she's tough as nails, but she's I would say one of the most likable female protagonists in video games. And a very strong female character without ever sort of dipping into that girl boss trope. But generally speaking, I would say that there is this sort of, we've seen this with Silent Hill 2, the remake of Silent Hill 2, with various other games, Star Wars Outlaws to a degree, where the main character is definitely not as attractive as the model she was based off of. So I understand why this feeling like, oh, they're making all the women look uglier in games these days. Why are they doing that? And it is a weird trend. Not to say, though, that we shouldn't play as ugly characters or as less attractive characters. I mean, I would say in general, our attachment to super attractive characters all the time is a little bit silly, right? And that includes in movies and TV. Like, people don't always have to be super attractive. But that is just the market, right? People want, if you're going to stare at a character you're playing as for 40 hours, you want someone who is attractive or who is interesting, right? Like, if I go into a character creator, like, sometimes I will make a character who's, super hot. But sometimes, like, I've played runs of Dark Souls where I've made like a fat monk with like a tonsure, and he's not attractive at all, and he's, doesn't look like he'd survive Lordran or but generally speaking, I understand. Like, and if I'm watching a TV show, like I'm watching Rivals right now on Hulu, which is a great show, by the way. It takes place in the 1980s, and it's definitely more watchable because some of the actors and actresses are so good looking, right? There's the chick who plays Taggy in that, I think, is probably like the most gorgeous woman on TV right now. She is smoking hot, but I think that there's this is a little bit complicated, right? But I think that the main thing is that when I saw Jordan's character, I just knew what kind of character she would be, and then in the rest of that clip, it just backed it up. And it's just the kind of character that I don't really want to play. Like, they might be a fine side character, maybe, but it's so expected and predictable and on the nose for modern developers in 2024 to have female characters like this. And I would like to have complicated female characters in my video games, right? Morally gray, or at least like given the option to play characters who are complex. And again, they could have made a character who was really ugly, genuinely ugly. Like, I don't think Jordan's ugly, but they could have made, a mercenary character with, that was covered in scars and looked all run down and was like 20 years old or whatever. None of the sort of hallmarks of traditional beauty, but given her a personality that wasn't so obnoxious, and I think people would not be throwing as much of a fit. Or the people who did would be really outing themselves as only caring about physical appearance rather than all the personality issues that are really fundamentally at the base of this critique, right? So that's what I just would like to see more of in games, is where these characters are actually given personalities, especially female characters are given personalities that go that go beyond just girl boss tropes. In a similar way that I think a lot of, the traditional video game dudes get a little old after a while, and it's fun to see characters who have different personalities. Which is why, characters, even badass characters like Dante from Devil May Cry, are fun because they are not just sort of the grizzled, strong, silent type, but they have some humor and some wisecracking and all that. Is there a trend to make female characters in particular uglier? I think so in Western game dev. And then you have the opposite extreme in like Asian and Japanese and Korean game dev, where you have jiggle physics and all the women are just like barely wearing anything, and that's the other extreme. And of course, I would like to see more fall in the middle somewhere, And it's not just about attraction, but how these characters and their personalities are portrayed in the game themselves. And it's not limited to female characters when it comes to this stuff. I mean, if you look at Peter Parker in Spider-Man versus Spider-Man 2, like his face is totally different, and it's really weird and jarring. Like, why did they make him look so different? And I don't know, the people who sort of respond negatively to me saying all this stuff generally are assigning the worst motives. Like, I just care about, I just need characters that I can jerk off to or whatever, which is silly because I don't know, like, I don't think some video games are definitely designed to jerk off to, but I think most of them are just games we want to enjoy playing. And most of that is the personality of the characters that we end up playing, except for games where that doesn't matter as much. Again, Dark Souls, it doesn't really matter what your personality is. You don't really have one in Elden Ring or Dark Souls or Bloodborne. But I still want the character I look at to look cool. And so it's a little bit complicated. I was talking to a friend, and I brought this up before, so pardon me for treading old ground, but I thought it was funny. I was talking to a friend in my Call of Duty squad, and he was reading one of his wife's romance books, and he was remarking on how the men are in these books, and he's like, they're all really strong and seductive, and they're dark, but they have blonde hair and blue eyes and a piercing gaze, and it's like, again, romance novels are the space of women, right? 99% of people who read romance novels are women, and in these women's spaces, the men are portrayed in a way that women get off to. They're handsome, they're dangerous, they're mysterious, they're all these things. And nobody has gone into women's spaces and said, you need to change that to appeal more to men. Nowhere in women's spaces has this been done. As far as I can tell, and you're free to tell me I'm wrong here, but in romance in particular, there is a very, very clear archetype that is used for the men. I mean, usually the woman is the main character, and then there's some dashing, daring, brave, maybe difficult man that they're in love with, or that they fall in love with, that they hate at first and then they fall in love with, whatever. It's a clear archetype, and that is not changing. And if it did change, whatever books, whatever romance novels, movies were being changed to fit a male audience or to make the men less attractive, I mean, they would fail, right? This goes without saying that they would fail. But for whatever reason, you come to a space that is traditionally and still very much dominated by male consumers, and you have to change it. You have to change that space. And then the irony that comes out of this is, as all these things like video games and movies and all these things are changed to appeal more to women, theoretically, I'm not sure that they do, but theoretically to appeal more and to take that away from men, then you have a chorus of people saying men need to, take care of their own business. Men need to find their own spaces. And it's like, well, we have those spaces, and they have all been invaded by people trying to change them. Now, I'm not the kind of person who, like, on International Women's Day is like going out there and saying, what about International Men's Day? What about that? Like, I don't give a shit about that. Like, it's fine. I get it. I get that minority groups and women and all these different more traditionally less powerful groups have these celebrations as empowering and necessary celebrations to sort of come up in the world, because again, historically, that has not been the case. And I think there's a lot of really, really ugly stuff within the men's rights activists and men's rights movements and all this bullshit. I don't think we need that either. I think that's a extreme reaction to a perceived problem or a real problem, whatever you want to call it. But I do think that like men should be allowed to have their hobbies. Men should be allowed to enjoy the things that they like, including beautiful women. And that there's nothing at all wrong with saying we would like to have more attractive women in video games. And that's not inherently wrong either. So that's all I just wanted to say. And I also just wanted to make this video because I wanted to include my Ugly Women song, which I think is funny because it sounds like Jonathan Richman, the guy who did the music for Something About Mary, which that's a fun movie if you haven't seen it. So I'm gonna end there. I'm sure I've forgotten something, but I just thought I would do a little follow up to the last video. I don't think Ciri in The Witcher 4 is unattractive at all. Like, if she was a real person and I met her, I would totally go out with her. So, and I don't think that the point of Jordan's character's appearance is her look so much as what her style and appearance conveys about her personality and what that says about the writing in the game itself. So I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I hope both these games are fantastic. I mean, Naughty Dog's made a bunch of great games. And of course, so is CD Projekt Red. So I'm hopeful. And I think that probably a lot of this is overblown. We've only seen some cinematic trailers. There's not a lot to go on. But I understand also that the trend lately has been in this direction and people are worried. A lot of people are worried for a very good reason. So thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.
Ugly women, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ugly women, oh, oh, oh. Ugly women, blah, blah, blah. Ugly women, go, go, go. They say true beauty is within, but swear in there, you're still as ugly as sin. Ugly women, that's what we need. Ugly women picking up speed. Ugly women, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ugly women, ugly as sin. Ugly as sin.